Welcome, everyone. Thank you, and happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining us at our first ever Clue Roundtable discussion. We're very, very excited. My name is Madeline. I'm going to be moderating the discussion today and helping get all your questions answered. Today, we're going to be talking about equipment leaders on AI. So, what's working, what's hype, and what's coming next. So, we have three perspectives today: equipment ops, IT, and software. So, first, we're joined by Sylvan Partisati. He is the equipment manager at Nicholson Construction. So, Sylvan has been putting AI into, putting AI to work in real fleet workflows day to day, kind of on the ground. Next, we're joined by Robert Greiner, the CTO at Moss Utilities. He has been wrestling with the build versus buy discussion. AI is starting to change the way leadership makes calls and where it's going to go in the future as well. And then last but certainly not least, we have Oded Ron, the CEO and co-founder of Clue. Oded is working and leading the charge, working with contractors all across North America on all of this stuff, all the stuff that we're going to discuss. So I'm very, very excited to get into the discussion. Quick housekeeping. Any questions, drop in the Q&A. This is going to be an open discussion. Yes, we are recording. We'll follow up after we're finished here with the recording and any further questions. But without further ado, Oded, I'll pass it to you and we'll get started.
Thank you, Madeline, and thanks everyone for joining us. So our goal today is simple. Over the past couple of years, I think most of us become familiar with AI tools, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, for doing what we now feel is more the basic stuff like writing, summarizing, doing small tasks for us. What we're going to speak about today is the next generation, AI agents, AI assisted development, AI that doesn't just answer questions as a one-off, but actually performs work, automates workflows, helps solve real problems. And more importantly, we're going to stay grounded in heavy civil construction. So no theory, no futuristic predictions, just real examples of what's working today. For example, with Sylvan's team and Robert's team, what's proving harder than expected, and where does everyone feel things are headed next? So let's really jump straight in. Sylvan, if that's okay, we can start with you. Tell us about one way like all these new developments in AI this year started to make a meaningful difference in how you guys run equipment operations.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. So for us, we're still brushing the surface. Like Odette said, I think most of the people nowadays use the generative AI with the ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, whatever you want to use. But we started to look at the vibe coding, and it showed some limitations that I'll be able to share a little bit further along the way. And then the next step, the Grok build codex, etc., where we can really create some basic apps with real use case for the job site or for the teams to try to solve some real issues. So it's still the beginning for us, but we've already have a few that are working, and we'll keep pushing to see how we can be better at it and use it the best way, the most efficient way we can.
And we're going to share a few of these things in a second. But before we do, I want to let Robert maybe chime in. Robert, from your perspective, you as CTO, you manage a team as well as in charge of basically all the technology side. So same question for you. How does AI in 2026 making a difference at Moss?
Yeah, it really did really break the build versus buy equation. In the past, you'd have a need, you would do some kind of survey, find a SaaS solution that like maybe somewhat meets your needs, and then spend the next several weeks or months focusing on contracts and integration. And it wasn't quite what you wanted because those tools are built for 80% of people 80% of the time. And so now we're able to, in where it makes sense, build bespoke software for anywhere from a single person, a single user, to 600 users, just depending on the application and need. And that has allowed us to actually just build precisely what we need, nothing more, nothing less. We can be highly iterative around it and just kind of move on with our day. And so that's been really great and something that would have taken, it would have been prohibitively expensive in the past. It would have taken months or quarters. It would have taken a team of people to produce, and we just didn't need that level of energy or effort to get where you need to go today.
Right. So this is we're really hyping it a bit, right? I sometimes joke it's not vibe coding. It sound at least in one stage it was hype coding. But so Sylvain, let's try to bring it down. Give us an example of something that you guys built, you guys use. And as you're preparing to do it, we did a small survey amongst the participants, the attendees, and about a third of you said you're just starting with AI and the agentic AI. A third of you said, "Oh, we already," maybe a bit more than a third, maybe half of the folks here said, "We're already playing with a bit. We want to learn more." And the small proportion said, "We know it so well, we want to share." So those of you in that bracket, maybe later on, feel free to put on the Q&A and put your hand up. Um, but Sylvain, do you want to maybe give us a concrete example for
Yeah,
something you're doing?
sure. So on the job site, the question comes a lot about, hey guys, we're going to run this and this and this equipment. What kind of genset or generators we should get? So we came up with a spreadsheet where you could input the different loads and quantity, total HP. You convert it, you get basically um, the amps, etc., and it will give you the size of the genset you would have. But it's a spreadsheet; it can be broken easily. You need to have it, etc. So it gets really tricky. It's limited, and if you want to make some modification, you need to have some Excel skills that some of the people have, but not all of them. And so we basically used Grok Build, and I'm going to share the other screen now. To create the same thing, but with an app. Um, and so here it goes. So similar to the spreadsheet we had, it's just a sizing. So you have tables, you can select what you want, enter the HP, the quantity, what kind of starting it is. We have different conversions or factors that we have it here, and you can calculate basically the genset based on what you input. Next step is that we made it a chat. So if I basically say, okay, calculate a genset for 3 pumps on VFD, 1 HP motor, I'll send it. I go back up, I can calculate. It calculates me everything, tells me the recommended genset, which is the size above it, and it's easy for the guys on the field to use. And this is just a simple example. It takes 2 hours to build with the codecs or Grok build, and you can refine it very easily, very fast. And this is something that before the agentic AI were not even able to touch or have. It was an idea maybe, or maybe a complicated and intricate spreadsheet, but that was it. So it makes it really easy.
Sylvain, you're like, if you could keep the screen share just for one more second. We take it for granted that as an equipment manager, you were basically able to create software. Did you build software before this year ever?
No, no. So I've always liked computers and things like that, but I have no formation or training. It's just dabbling around and trying it out and reading about it. And this is the power of AI is that you're trying and you don't have the answer. You go ask the generative AI, hey, how could I do that, etc. And you basically have a coach with you, and it makes it really easy to try things at the fraction of a cost.
So for the third of people who have not yet tried it, maybe they just use ChatGPT to like write an email or a birthday wish. Like that was my first use of AI. When you got started, what would you share with these people? Like folks who've never even started, what was your impression on that? Are you the only equipment manager, for example, at Nicholson that currently you feel is doing it? What do you see as the dynamic right now? What stops people from trying to do what you're doing?
I think a lot of people don't know really where to start. And you just said it. You were asking for birthday wishes. On ChatGPT, you can ask them, okay, I have a concrete idea. I would like to do that. Guide me through it. And it just makes it super easy. So I guess to answer your question, what is stopping people is just maybe time and just trying. It's not that difficult. You just have to step in it.
Good. I think that was a feeling really almost across the board when I'm speaking with people, just like jumping into the water, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Robert, let's segue to you guys. And again, when Sylvain saw the demo that you were going to give us, he felt, oh, that's not fair. He's showing us a popper system. So for some context, obviously, Robert, you come from the world of technology, but what you built is just an example. And there are other companies very similar to you. So how about you share with us and also the background for what you built? Why did you build it and how much effort it was?
Yeah, I had a bit of an unfair advantage here. I have a background in software engineering and enterprise software development, and so that really helps because I feel like I know what to ask for sometimes. And then also I probably picked it up a little bit sooner. But one of the issues that we're having or had, I guess, here at Moss was we'd have a job site and we're bringing in lots of different types of storm drain, water, sewer, duct bank, structures, things like that. And these sites are massive. There's a lot of ground to cover. And we have in our bidding process, we're buying hundreds of items, thousands of items. We're getting invoiced on those sort of piecemeal. So one job may have hundreds of invoices, and then we pay someone to haul off uh, debris and trash. And then we're also bringing a lot of just like dirt and rock and things like that. And so when we're actually managing the materials, and then also kind of we're over here one day, and then 2 weeks later we're going to be over here. We need materials delivered in the new location. There's just a lot to manage on an Excel spreadsheet. And so one of our um, superintendents was just kind of showing me one day like how they manage things and kind of the hassle it was. And you have to add a row over here, and it just like Sylvain said, it's very easy to break, and then you kind of lose all visibility. And so we built an app basically to manage the materials on a job site. Let me share it real quick and kind of see how it works. So this is live right now. Can you see my screen okay?
Perfect.
Okay. So we call this Flux Materials. And so this syncs first off with all of our jobs in our ERP, and it's sort of tied into our data warehouse. So you can come in here and resync information if you need to. You get the job at a glance, so you can kind of see some of the dates, materials that were delivered, how much overall is delivered, how much cost has hit the ground. It helps us with our accounting, any kind of bid exposure, over deliveries, those types of things. So if you look here, there's kind of 4 off bid items that someone needs to go and look at around why did we get this part versus that. Sometimes it's a good in-place replacement. Sometimes it's accidental, those types of things. And then ultimately we'll have not only the job site visibility end to end, but when we get invoices, we'll be able to make sure that they match. They're at our agreed upon bidded rate, those types of things. So what we can do here is if I look at deliveries, we had some June 29th. So, and this all works on the phone as well. So it's all responsive. Someone can come in here for today, hit scan ticket. There I am. Take a picture of the ticket. It will OCR and basically try to match what's on the ticket with what's on the bid. So you can see it's just these kind of paper tickets. They're sort of checked off here. And then that matches to actual items that we have in our bid. And you can see, like, for some reason, we got 2 here, and we were supposed to only get 1. So there's a few reasons why that could happen, but it just at least gives you a piece to go look at. And then we have sort of this full visibility. You can see like all the photos that were taken at the job site, tickets. And then what we're trying to do a lot more of next is actually take pictures of proof of delivery. And so we'll have like this basically full audit trail of everything that we can kind of manage. When the job's closed out, we can manage returns, all the trucking, and then also ultimately invoicing and approvals and things like that. So the project managers are really given a suite to go through and manage the project materials end to end.
Robert, thank you. And everyone looking at it, just to confirm, this software, everything we're looking, that's basically something that you guys built internally.
100% homegrown, iterated. We basically just our whole playbook is we get an idea and we sort of treat it as an experiment. So there's for every one of these that you saw, there's probably a dozen that we just kind of tried and threw away, or it wasn't really worth it, or maybe it was a one-off thing. And then we basically put up the very minimum up, right? And then we iterate really quickly on what they like, what they don't like. We use a lot of logging and telemetry to figure out how users are using the system, and then we just kind of keep iterating until at some point it's kind of off on its own and it's a living and breathing application, and it's more of like kind of in a low maintenance support mode. But the code that you saw there, like everything was 100% AI built. There's no artisan coding at all. There is all by it's some combination of Claude, ChatGPT, and Grok.
Amazing. Um, yeah, thank you. Oded, I'd like to pose the same question to you, um, around what's changed most. And then we have a really good question from the chat as well that, after you've shared, I'd like to ask the three of you as well.
Sure. I think the last year has really been for anyone in software in particular or in general, a really massive difference. And I think the key thing that changed is now when we work with a fleet, work with equipment and people, and when they ask the software for something, the answer completely stopped being no. In the past, you'd sometimes say no, but now every person that we meet have a list of things they want the software to do, and each one of them learned slowly in the past to stop asking because the answer is always it's on the roadmap. Um, and I'll give a really concrete example. Like just last October, we had maybe one place where AI was doing real work. Today there are about 10, and the 10 different areas that AI is doing work. And most of these things for us took weeks and not quarters to build. The bottleneck moved. So it used to be something that, you'd say we can build it. Now it's if you can describe precisely how your operation works, then there is the ability of software to solve that. And actually, that becomes the harder problem. The harder problem is knowing what you want. And that's the one problem no one warns us about. The best analogy I have is imagine AI as an incredible chef. It can cook any meal that you want, but it cannot read your mind. It cannot tell you what you want. So if you haven't decided what you want to eat, that chef is not very useful. But as long as you can really work with people to know what they want, that changed massively.
Amazing. Thank you. So really good question from the chat around delegating and keeping organized, shifting to AI. So, either all three of you or one or two, how are you guys organizing your work with AI? Like, are you using specialists, outsourcing, or delegating? How are you keeping track of everything? Oded?
Yeah, maybe actually for the guys, Robert, how do you guys decide? I'm going to build it myself, or I'm going to find a vendor or to do
Yeah,
it?
poorly right now. So, and then there's like the tracking question. I want to make sure we come back to that. So right now we kind of think about, uh, I guess, acquiring software, implementing software in a few different buckets. One is if you would never want to wade into that because it would be a near death experience. It's not really differentiating for our company. So like ERP would be a great example. We're not going to build any kind of accounting software or ERP. We have what we have, and nobody really likes it, but there's not really a better option out there, and we're gonna live with it. So what we might do is build automation on top of it but we definitely are not going to rewrite that. So that's an easy buy decision. The next would be software that we think is just done really well, and it just makes sense to buy it. We don't have to get into the business of sort of designing it, implementing it, burning tokens on it, focusing our limited energy when it actually what's out there is like pretty well done. And also they have a really good integration platform. I think Clue's that way too. So we definitely, when we were moving on from our fleet management app, we were deeply considering just building it on our own. But when you start to get into all the telematics and logistics around fleet management, is one of those we'd be better off integrating and having a core brain to focus on that. And then the third bucket is really like things that we look out there. There's no good option. We know we could do better, or it's so business critical that we really want something that's bespoke to us. And so that's how we kind of choose. It's kind of a rough decision framework, though. It's not like we break out Excel and fill out a bunch of rows and columns. And then on tracking, I don't have a great answer right now. So we use a tool called Linear, which is basically made for development teams to track and manage software tasks, priorities, initiatives, things like that. But when you start getting the agents involved, it just tends to sprawl and balloon out. So that's been a bit of a challenge to keep the documentation, the task management, the prioritization sort of in line with the pace of how things are built, especially when you're experimenting and things like that.
Sylvain, for you, now that you built a tool, so do you become the software developer fixing bugs and they tell you we want it to do this and that? How are you managing it?
So right now, yeah, I'm the one for the company, at least for the equipment department. I don't know how we'll go about it. We're not software company, or we don't have a dedicated team. We're a construction company. So for the small things like I showed you, we can do it. We can try. For the bigger stuff, we may look at doing something to see what you need or what we want. For example, if you think CMMS, we've played around with vibe coding, trying to look at functions and how we would like it to work, but it's too complicated, it's too intricated, then we can't maintain it, etc. So, okay, we know what we want, we play with it. Now, who on the market matches the most of the boxes that we are looking at, and who could integrate, as Robert said, or what automation or integration can we have on top of it? And this is how we found you guys. When we're looking at different modules that we were looking at, and your potential and power and response of, hey, what if it does that? Oh, let's try it. Oh, yeah, it works. And you guys move so fast that for us, we're a construction company. It doesn't make sense to try to go develop it on our own. And we can rely on good partners.
So one of the problems I've seen in AI, it's like sometimes people really hype it, right? It makes it sound it's amazing, and they don't tell you about all the headaches that you have. It's lots of fun, but it's double the fun, but maybe double the hard work. So Sylvan, let's stay with you. Like, what's the one thing that it just doesn't work, or it's frustrating, or it's not as rosy as people make it sound?
Um, I think the to scale it, when you try it on your computer, you're the only one using it. It's all good, but then you try to push it to more people or to a bigger team, and it breaks, or the database management, all of that is not as easy as it seems. And maybe it's easier for people like Robert that are in the business and know what they're doing, less for us.
Right. So like there's a gap basically between like building something on your computer and like rolling it out for people.
Yes.
Robert, now that's your what's your perspective?
Yeah,
Because my point is really, I don't know if you guys are as tired as I am and people like this is amazing. Like you taste it, it's okay. There are still some issues, right?
yeah, it's like both amazing and frustrating at the same time. So I, I've had tremendous frustration anything that runs autonomously as an agent. Like I don't understand really why when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm directing, Claude Code or something like that. It just seems to work really well. Like I think software development is a premier use case of generative AI. So like I'm in kind of a good lucky zone there. But then as soon as you try to start popping that off and having it run on its own, even if you really kind of tightly scope what these agents do, it just all falls apart really quickly. And so I get very, on one hand, like optimistic and ecstatic about AI and the progress of AI, and I'm in it every day, and I spend way too much money on it. And then also like hyper skeptical about like really anything agentic and being able to take humans out of the loop. It's just been I haven't seen anyone do it well. I don't know of any use cases where like that's really happening at scale, but I do know that when we start to focus on kind of basics of okay, we already have a bunch of employees here, we can put Claude or ChatGPT or whatever in their hands. We can teach them how to use it, and they're going to find really great ideas on how to make their day to day 5, 10, 15, 20% better. And when you do that at scale, like that's a really good place to start. And maybe is the precursor to anything that's hyped and maybe will come in the future, but I'm not seeing it today.
Right. So I know Sylvan, when definitely equipment managers were a group that when AI vibe coding and everything started like 6 months ago, it was like we're going to be out of a job in a year, right? And it's very different when you actually have the experience building the tools. Robert, you basically said I don't see agents replacing anytime soon what humans do in many areas. Sylvan, how do you see it on equipment management? Like if I'm an equipment manager, where is AI a threat to me, and where is it a massive opportunity to me personally?
I don't think it's a threat at all. I feel like it will be a help more than anything else. As Robert said, I don't think agents will replace us anytime soon. It will just help us make better decision and informed decision and make decision faster. When you take days or hours looking at different reports and previous work orders to see what is the recurring breakdown, AI, you can just put all the work orders in it and it will tell you, okay, this is repeating every 200, 400, 500 hours. And so you will make a better decision, but it's not like it's going to make the decision for you or take your job. I don't see it this way. And you're hearing also that with the AI, the equipment will be autonomous, etc. I think it's just this is just hype. It's not happening anytime soon, or at least not in our industry.
Right. So what's the one area that you feel, okay, for us this year, 2026, these are the one or two things I feel AI is agentic AI, we can do much more internally in our company. What's the one, what are the areas you're most excited about?
The analysis of the breakdowns and repairs, see where our equipment fail really to be able to anticipate it and be more productive on the job sites.
So data analysis with the clear recommendations.
Yeah.
Robert, for you guys, is a lot of that was building customized tools that are make you unique, make you more competitive. Is that the main thing? What else?
Yeah, well, one thing that I was really surprised about in a good way is when we started. So we give everyone Claude, and someone on our accounting team essentially was trying to forecast cash flow. So Claude's tied into our data warehouse. She can see like all of our customers when we invoice them, their average days to pay, right? And so she just kind of asked Claude to build a swim lane report where it's like you have weeks and each week is a lane, and then you kind of project out what invoices we've sent and when's the cash going to hit the bank. And then she said, "Oh, that would be really cool if I could actually drag this, and if I know a payment's going to be later or whatever, and put some notes in." And so she essentially built like a POC or version one as a subject matter expert, a designer, and a like initial forward deployed engineer almost, and had this app, and then got to the point where I was like, okay, well, this is only running on my machine. I don't know what to do with it. I'd like to share it. But we basically took that and got it hardened and deployed and kind of fixed up a little bit, and now the entire accounting team is using it to forecast cash. And that was really eye opening because it completely circumvented a lot of what I had to do, which was go sit down with the team, kind of coax out requirements, take a first cut myself, and then we iterate a bunch. Now we're kind of starting, 5 steps down the road. And I think over the next 12 months, we'll have half a dozen employee built apps that are deployed, and the majority of that work was done using their own taste and judgment and expertise into this small or micro app that saves them time or provides some kind of insights or analysis. And we just get it deployed, and we kind of maintain a fleet of those as well.
Okay, so many questions come up when you say that, right? So you as CTO, you give first Claude code access to pretty much every employee in the office that asks for it.
Yeah, so we run Google Workspace, and so everybody has Gemini. So usually when you ask, we just kind of point you to Gemini. It's in our like enterprise agreement. It's all kind of protected and things like that. And we've had people say like, oh, it helps me as like a concrete form in not only like write better emails, but also do like calculations and things like that. So people are just finding ways when you put it in their hands to help them do their job better. And especially when you say, hey, you're not really going to break anything. You're responsible for your output, whether it's AI generated or not, but like go for it. And then what we found is Claude is much better at more maybe analytical tasks. So anything like spreadsheet related, stuff like that. So we pretty quickly got our project managers and account finance team and estimators, like we just got them Claude access as well, which gives you co-work and code and things like that. So it's basically just we give a little bit of training, have some sessions where we answer questions, and then they're off to the races. And it's been really surprising to see how quickly people who are not technical at all just take it up and run with it, and then they're doing some really neat stuff with it.
And Sivan, how is it for you? Is it just a matter of I'm paying it for my personal credit card? How do you not get your head chopped by IT, figure out, wait a minute, you're building software?
So we're part of the bigger group, and we have the enterprise agreement with Microsoft and Copilot. So everybody has access to Copilot for generative or whatever. We have Copilot. If we want to do something else, I mean, everything that I've showed you, I did it on my time on my computer. We're, as I mentioned, we're part of the bigger group. They're working on some of this stuff. So if we want to try to be a little bit faster and try things on our own, we need to circumvent it and look at it on the outside for now. But it's coming.
Right, right. And then Robert, another question. Let's talk a bit about security. At least the larger companies we speak with immediately ask, wait a minute, you're going to be building AI. Is my data now in the wild? How are you thinking about all the aspects of who owns my data?
Yeah, yeah.
One of your users, you mentioned accounting. So theoretically, that is at a risk. Someone by mistake uploads your entire payroll to the cloud.
Yes, right. So there's a couple of layers to that. First of all, everything that we hook into and you have like basically cloud connectors into is mostly read only. So like our data sources and things like that. So we do have a sort of best practice software deployment security hardening around like our infrastructure. And then we were careful on the like sort of enterprise agreement that we entered into with Anthropic, and also that we have with Google, to make sure that basically our data is as protected and private as it would be if it was in SharePoint or something like that. And then just the realization that this is going to happen anyway, right? So if we don't provide these tools, someone on the estimating team or accounting team who's behind on a deadline already has a ChatGPT subscription, maybe it's free, and they're just going to put it in there anyway, right? And so part of it is we try to celebrate the usage of AI to provide some best practices, use cases, guardrails around it, and then really try to lock down our data as best we can. And it's more of a training slash policy driven output as well. So I'm not sure that anybody has this like fully figured out yet, but that's what's working for us right now.
Cool. Thank you, Robert.
Amazing. Oded, question for you. Looking across all of the contractors that you work with and have worked with over the last year or so, what's the biggest change you've seen in the last year?
I think the biggest change is the equipment team, is what they ask the software to do. It used to be like, give me a report on this. And now it's more like, do this for me. So like in our system, like I don't know, a year ago, maybe six customers were interacting with AI. Now it's the vast majority of them, definitely over 90%. And but it's actually the shape of it. So if someone uses AI once or twice, then there is really, one in three chance they will necessarily come back again. But the second they get hooked, it jumps like past six times of usage. They're using it every day. Like they cross the threshold of trusting the AI. Almost like self-driving cars. For any of you who've tried it, there's a point where you don't trust it, but the second you trust it, most of your miles will become, self-driving if you have such a car. And I'll give like concrete example. I literally saw, a few days ago, one of our customers types reclassify every Ford Explorer to be a passenger vehicle in the system. And I've got hundreds of them. So that was a task that previously would mean they have to find every asset and maybe edit them one by one. All of a sudden, they do it as a task. So being able to trust software to use as task, the biggest change is not the technology, is that we're seeing how the users are getting it to just save them time. Yeah. What question do we have? I saw a few questions coming up around tools and design from the audience.
Yeah, really, really good questions. For This is a good one. So for our developers that are working in cloud or making software for us, are we using, or what's been the transition like to use between Cloud Chat, Cowork, or are we using Terminal, desktop? I guess what are we
Yeah.
using the most, and what's the transition like for people who aren't used to maybe getting into Terminal?
Okay, so Robert, maybe you can take that first. Like, I guess question about the stack. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, how do you build things right now? What's
Yeah,
what's your stack?
it, oh man, it changes so much. So if I woke up tomorrow and did not have anything, I had to go buy a new MacBook and start from scratch. I would use the terminal and a really great harness called Pi. I think it's at pi.dev. It's open source. And basically, the founder of Pi looked at Claude Code and said, "This is amazing, but it's becoming really bloated. They're just constantly shipping features. There's this weird like, the company saying software engineering is dead, but they can't keep it from flickering like whenever it refreshes, right? And so there was just a period of time, and even still now, where it's just very heavy application, and they change the system prompts in the background sometimes without you knowing, and so it just is not as predictable. And so Pi is like very lightweight and clean. You can hook up your Chat GPT subscription to it and use it that way. So that's sort of my preference right now. Everybody that joins my team though gets Claude Code to start with, and just kind of if you want something different, we can talk about that and why it makes sense. But it's just a good sort of default. The desktop app is really nice. If you don't want to use the terminal, using Claude Code through their app, it works just as well. The remote control piece is nice because you can continue to chat with your sessions on your phone when you're on the go. So there are definitely some features that I think they're ahead of everyone on. Um, and it really doesn't matter. I tend to prefer the terminal, but if you want to use the app, it's totally fine as well.
And Sylvain, if you're an equipment manager, you want to build a tool really similar to what you showed us, what would you tell someone to start with?
Um, I had a subscription on X. I use Grok. They came up with Grok build. So this is how I started. And I just put it plainly, this is what I'm trying to do. Here's the file. And it's started like that. And I don't like the way it looks. I'll try this. And so it's like having developer with you and just making updates. So I use Grok. I don't know where we'll go in the future because it's based also on the bigger group. Right now, it seems to work for us.
Perfect. Thanks, Sylvain.
Thank you so much. Um, all right, well, we have flown through this 45 minutes. Thank you, Sylvain and Robert, for actually sharing your screen and showing us what you've built. I have one more question, maybe two. We'll start with Sylvain. So look 1 year ahead. What's something that feels really cutting edge today, but you think will feel very normal in 1 year?
uh, Everything that we've talked about today. Having the agents just building stuff for you and more people using it. And maybe like Robert said, people that you didn't expect to use it, using it and converting it to real case scenario, real usage, like his accounting team building an app.
Yeah. Robert?
Yeah, I think the models will continue to get out of the way a lot more, and just you'll be able to speak more plainly. They'll be able to speak more plainly to you, which is terrible today. I think that will help unlock sort of the next wave of builders, of people creating technology using generative AI, because it's much easier to interact with. And when AI is explaining something to you, it's using language that you understand, and that will help. That will create a bit of an explosion around apps being built, and then everyone's going to look up and say, "Where? How do I manage this? How do I support it? How do I deploy it?" And then all the tooling and white papers and like agentic flows will kind of, I think, catch up. And so I think we'll see a just sort of building your own one-off technology solutions is as like the default, and you'll be shocked when, or surprised when, someone picks a different direction.
Thanks. And Oded?
I think when I look at our software today, we still wait for the user. So we wait for someone to come and say what they want and find the right screen, or maybe we help them navigate. And I think in a year, I think it flips. I think the software starts a conversation. So instead of someone typing, I need to send the man lift to that Route 9 job, you can actually, as you start, say this machine is running, 40% over planned hours. It will miss a service window. There's an idle one 12 miles away. Do you want to swap them? And you say yes or no. Because you know, as companies move, there's more data than ever, but decisions are still really it's even harder to make decisions because there's so much information. So flipping that over and connected to that, I don't know if everyone caught Sylvain literally in the tool that Sylvain bought. He put like a chat. Literally, you could speak plain language, and we take it for granted. It's absolutely incredible. And I think we always talk about user interface, and there is mobile app interface and web, but the conversational interface will absolutely become almost expected. The ability to tell a system, "Hey, just create for me a work order," or just do that, and speak in multiple modalities, will be completely taken for granted. That it has to do it. I think that's coming up as well.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple other questions coming in, so we'll probably go 1 or 2 minutes over if that's okay with everyone, but I want to get some of these answered. So, first one posed to Oded. So, obviously, AI has come in very, very quickly, and it's been very exciting, um, and it's seemingly not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But there are still going to be organizations that are hitting a wall or are still kind of a little bit resistant to roll out. So what's your advice to, obviously we know everyone here is interested in using AI in some way. What's your advice to anyone who is dealing with that pushback or any orgs that are still hesitant to get into AI?
Yeah. So, Robert, Sylvain, do you have cases where management or finance or owner said, "Hey, you're not using AI," and what would you do in those cases?
Well, it's the opposite here. So it's a lot of it's like we need to find ways to use it more. I think there's a balance because you also get the extreme other end, which is like everyone needs to be using it all the time for everything, right? And that's not the case here, but um, definitely is like vocal support. If there's probably good reasons if someone's opposing the use of AI, it gets really it looks incredible, and it is like a feat of engineering. I think Mark Andreessen said we basically, as a human race, turned sand into intelligence, which is, I mean, it's amazing, but it's also very limited in a lot of ways. And the stuff it's good at, it's great at, and the stuff it's limited at, it's not. And I think if someone's skeptical about it, it's usually because of some kind of risk or bad experience in the past, or maybe a lack of understanding. But usually there's something worth digging into there. And I think there's usually always a way to scope some kind of quarantined off experiment or POC or use case that'll help kind of unlock the ideas around what's possible. And I would try to maybe start there, but also I would advice number one would be like take that skepticism very seriously. These are just guessing machines, and they want to keep you happy, and those two combinations are, um, can lead to bad outcomes. And so I would definitely say step number one, really take it seriously, understand where that skepticism is coming from, and then see what you can do to address it while still using AI.
Cool. Thank you. And for those of you who have to duck after the 45 minutes, we will stay for a few more minutes to answer the many questions that have come in, and this will be still recorded. I think, Madeline, I see one question came in. People asking, how do I educate myself to keep AI from breaking software when I'm going and scaling it? Sylvan, in terms of like first educating, what would your advice be?
Um, Try to read as much as you can. Try to find people that you know are on top of it, or at least educated in it and leading it, and just read, try, um, and keep pushing it. But I don't have a secret recipe. I'm just out there reading and trying and talking to people that maybe are more advanced than myself, to see if it's applicable to us and things like that.
Yeah, and I would add to that, I found that of all ways to first you can ask the AI itself, hey, I'm stuck with this, help me. I noticed that at least Grok or X seems to have the most accurate, latest answers for how to fix things. So if that question was specifically where's the best place to try to solve things, I my go-to is at least for the time being X. Um, Robert, there is a question around really security. Again, you mentioned that you have agreements, and Sylvain, you mentioned it as well. Are there cases where, for example, how would you advise a company to go about ensuring that the data that we're going to put into AI truly doesn't leak out?
Yeah. So what we did to start with was created a data warehouse internally and only ingested uh, data into that we would not be catastrophic. It would be terrible if it got out, right, but it's we're kind of filtering out all the like really sensitive stuff, and then that's what we give as connectors to for experimentation and playing around with different AI use cases. And so that's one idea. And then everything we build, even though it's 100% AI generated, goes through a pretty rigorous continuous integration process where we do like scanning and different types of having like AI review and find like security vulnerabilities and defects and things like that, and provide that input back in. And so there's a lot of like best practice, like software integration, uh, static analysis, processing that it still makes sense to do. It makes even more sense to do because at the end of the day, we're just creating and deploying code. So as long as the best practices are in place, you're mitigating a lot of that security and having things break downside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've gone 5 minutes past. Let's bring this to a close. Reminder to everyone who joined, we'll be sending this recording out right after. Maybe not right after, but we appreciate everyone for joining. One final question. Start with Sylvan. For anyone who is either new or hesitant in our space that's still skeptical or again new, kind of early stages of playing around, what's one thing you would want that person to remember after today's discussion?
You can try small. You can
Mm,
try small and confirm that it works.
yeah. Start with the birthday message.
Yeah.
Robert, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I'd like to just build off that because I think it's the right answer. You're not gonna break anything when you start, and so just use plain language. Tell the AI tool what you want, and kind of see what it does. And if you don't like it, you can just throw it away. You can hit new chat, and just kind of go back and forth. And I very rarely get the answer that I want the first try. It usually takes them back and forth. And so just be prepared to do that and start with something small and build from there for sure.
And I'll be the one to go last. To reiterate what Sylvana Roberts says, jump into the water. It's safe enough. The first one to be in the water. It will be cold a bit at the beginning, that water of using agentic AI, but now is the time. It will be as ludicrous in a year even to not be doing it as it is to not be connected to the internet or not have a mobile phone, at least for work purposes. So that's the one thing to remember.
Amazing. Well, thank you everyone again. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sylvan. Thank you, Oded. Um, we were really, really excited and super happy about this discussion, and I'm very thrilled that this got to be our first roundtable hosted by Clue. So, next one we have coming down the pipeline is going to be focused all on telematics, which we hear about a lot. So, we're excited to share. So, be on the lookout for that. Again, recording will be on the way. And any further questions y'all have, send them over in response to that email. But thank you again, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
so much, Sylvan. Thank you, Robert. Thank you,
Thank
Madeline.
Yeah.
you.